to be having such a happy start, and some others not so much. One feeling not quite sure of themselves in the context of school. So that kind of started me off with my research around transition, and I've learned a lot since then, and I want to share some of that with you tonight. There's lots of things we could go into more deeply, and hopefully you will over time with some of the workshops and early start. So tonight's a bit of a snapshot in thinking about what makes for a happy and successful start for your little ones coming to school. So we have a little look at what research says about that. Readiness, that idea of readiness and what's important for children and families to be ready for school. How does play fit into that readiness when we think about academic skills and play? Where do they sit? And some practical considerations. I always like to throw out, and smattered throughout, you'll see some questions for your intended school. So you're thinking about some of the things I would like to know from my school community if it was myself and my child attending in terms of some of these things. So get started. So first of all, I want you to have a little bit of a think about your memories from school. Now, I don't expect you to remember those very first few days. I certainly don't. But I do have some memories from kindergarten and beyond, some happy memories and also some things that probably weren't so great. I'd love you now to have a think about that, or if you're sitting near someone, have a bit of a chat and see if you can recollect some of those happy memories and positive things from your earliest times at school, and then perhaps maybe something that wasn't so great for you. Wow, thank you. It's really nice to sometimes I do ask this question and everyone kind of sits there for a little while, and it was nice to see some smiles and some, happy, I can hear some happy thoughts going throughout there. So would anyone like to share a little something that was positive to start with that they remember from the earliest times at school?
I can remember my first friend at school had the same name as me. We were allowed to sit near each other, but I remember also, well, my mum's always told me, but she always said I came home and told her that everyone else in the class was a bit stupid and I really didn't have to go back anymore.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I'll just repeat it for our people on Zoom if they didn't hear you, that someone had the same name as you, which is a fond memory. Do you know when I went back to school, I won't tell you what year it was when I started school, there were actually 5 Lyns in my class. Oh, that probably gives you a bit of an idea of who you are. That was a little bit crazy. I don't think that name's coming back, thank goodness. Many are. Thank you for that. Has anyone else got another memory, positive or not so positive, they'd like to share?
I don't actually root, sorry. You have your hand.
Oh, would
I just like call it out. my mum tells me that they had to go and get my brother out of his year 2 class to console me because I was so sad, because I'd always been told that I was going to school with my brother, and when I got into my class, he wasn't there. So I thought, reflecting on that, I'm like, oh, that's a good thing to clarify.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Be very explicit about what it is that we say at that time. Thank you.
This is my sister, and so she's a little bit older than me. So my older sister took the one which is a bit older than me on her first day. My mother didn't go, and she just left her in the playground. So the teachers walked this little child around all the classes and said, "Who owns this child?"
That is, isn't it? Yeah, back in the day, there's a few stories similar to that. Thank you. Did you want to add something?
I was lucky enough to go to kindergarten with my cousins, as in the same class as my cousins. So the three of us were a bit of a formidable force. And apparently I don't remember this, but Mum tells me I shared a poem from my grandfather, which apparently wasn't very appropriate with my teacher upon arriving at kindergarten.
Kindergarten stories. Kindergarten teachers get lots of fun and interesting stories and information. And thinking about cousins makes me think also about friends and friendships. And for me, some of my happiest memories of school and why I really loved going to school, particularly in primary school, was about friends and having fun and enjoying playing, at recess and lunch. And I still have some of those friends from kindergarten today, so they must have been special. And research tells us that for children, that's one of the most important things that they say about having a happy start to school, is that knowing people, whether it's cousins or friends, that really supports them. So, and the way we think about, the way we reflect on our memories from school can often colour the way we might sort of unwittingly influence our little ones' thoughts as they move on to school. We can pass out our little bit of anxiousness towards them. The kindergarten teacher in me has to share this when I talk about transition to school. I don't know if you're familiar with Finding Nemo. It's a very short little clip from the movie about Nemo's first day at school. I hope you can hear it.
First day of school! Wake up, wake up! Come on, first day of school!
No, I don't want to go to school. 5 more minutes.
Not you, Dad, me!
Okay.
Get up, get up! Time for school, time for school, time for school, time for school!
All right, I'm up. It's time for school.
Whoa!
Nemo!
First day of school!
Nemo, don't move! Don't move! You'll never get out of there yourself. I'll do it. All right, where's the brake? You feel a brake? Sometimes you can't tell because fluid is rushing into the area. Now, any rushing fluids? Are you woozy?
No.
How many stripes do I have?
I'm fine.
Answer the stripe question.
3.
No! See, something's wrong with you. I have 1, 3. That's all right. You're okay. How's the lucky fin?
Lucky.
Let's see. Are you sure you want to go to school this year? Because there's no problem if you don't. You can wait 5 or 6 years.
Dad, it's time for school.
Forgot to brush.
Oh.
Do you want this anemone to sting you?
Yes.
Brush.
Okay, I'm done.
Up, you missed a spot. Right there, and here.
So some of you might be feeling a little bit like Nemo's dad, wanting to keep them close and not wanting that day to come, and others might be really excited about all the opportunities that are going to open up for your little ones, and probably a little bit of both, I suspect. So what we hope for our children is to have a positive and a happy start to school. Here's some of the things that I would wish for, and I'm sure you wish for too, and they're indicative of a happy start for children. So you want your child to be liked. You want them to be comfortable and feel suitable, that they fit into this new surrounding. You want them to feel valued for who they are and what they can do, what they can bring. You want them to experience success. So you want them to be able to do the things that they're asked to do, with relative ease. And that will give them a positive self-concept as a learner but also positive image of themselves as a person. And when all those things are in place, they'll have positive expectations of school itself and what's to come in the future. So how are we going to set this up for our children? So research tells us these two things are key for that to happen. First of all, it's about relationships, and relationships that are built between the children, between the families, the teachers and the school personnel, to allowing the children then to develop that sense of belonging to that educational community. So trying as hard as you can to develop those relationships with the school, with the teachers, with the other families in the school. That happens quite easily in early childhood context, doesn't it? You have lots of opportunity to come in, chat with the teachers, stand around, perhaps if you've got time, chat with the other families. So you have to work a little bit harder at that at school because of the nature of school and the context. But it's really worth being mindful of, thinking of the ways that you can develop those relationships. And schools as well work hard at doing that. The second point is where teachers recognise children's strengths and make connections to those strengths, to those interests and to the knowledge that the children bring with them from home. And that comes from that foundation of the relationship, doesn't it? How do they get to know you? How do they get to know your child and their strengths? So what sorts of things happen during that time of transition prior to the year starting, and then once the children start, that enables that to happen. So my question to schools, to the school community is, how will my school community get to know me, my family and my child? There's lots of things that schools do put in place for that. What are they? And taking advantage of everything that comes along there is to offer, whether it's the playgroups prior to the year before, lots of opportunities for transition days, hopefully, for orientation days, meeting other families, introducing yourselves to the teachers, sharing some information. So school's about change, isn't it? It's very different. You would obviously know. Physically, it's different. The environment is huge. The classroom, compared to the early childhood context, lots of classrooms, playgrounds here, socially, so many different children, so many different adults, some familiar, some unfamiliar. So you can imagine the independent skills that children need as they move into these unknown environments. And of course, the academic environment also becomes a lot more formalised, a lot more structured as children move up in the school environment. But change is not bad. Most children are really looking forward to the change. It's how we support them in navigating those changes and what we do in the lead up and while they're there that will see them having a happy time through those changes. And my mouth gets so dry, I have to keep drinking. This is a little snippet from Sean. He was a dad and his son was really looking forward to the change. He said he had 2.5 years at preschool and he was realising that he was growing out of that routine and seeing that the routine suited the younger children. I mean, he loved preschool and the relationships with the adults there, but I could see he was ready for a change. And many children are ready for that change in they're just a little bit more. But they still need that support in undergoing those changes. So what is it about the change? Is my child ready for all the changes? And that's maybe something that you're thinking about as you come here tonight. To think about, what does it mean to be ready? Who decides when you're ready? What support do you need to get ready? Usually when I say ready and readiness, I do these ones because it's such a loaded concept and it means different things to different people. Sometimes we ask that readiness question about the child, we can put the onus all on them to be ready. So it's kind of like a checklist, right? Can do this, can't do this, can do this. Maybe they're ready, maybe they're not. But research has given us a really nice description that tells us how children become ready. So when the families are ready, and you're doing this now, you're getting ready, you're thinking about what you need to do, how you can support children as a family. So you're getting ready. Early childhood services get ready. I talk to educators quite a bit in my role as I teach a subject on transition to schools in the early years degree. And I ask them about what they do to get ready for the children going to school. And invariably they tell me everything they do. From the time that little one walks in their door, they're all about developing them holistically and supporting them in moving, being at the moment, but then moving forward as they move into school. And of course, when it gets to that pointy end, they put a bit more structure around it, organise lots of reciprocal information sharing with local schools and have certain events and do school readiness programs around independent skills and a range of things. So they're getting ready. Communities need to be ready as well. So you probably notice in your communities there's lots of things going on. There might be Billy Backpack in the park, or there's Paint the Gong Red, and libraries do certain things around reading and literacy skills. And of course the health support throughout the community for children, hearing tests, all those sorts of things that you may need to avail yourself with. And schools get ready. We used to say, what do we do for how do we get our children ready for school? But what we like to say, some of us in education, is what do schools need to do to get ready for the children? And it flips it around, and the schools have to be ready for whomever walks in their gate. So how do they make connections to each and individual child? Again, how do they get to know those children? How do they get ready to support everyone where they're at? And when everyone's ready, then the children are ready. More about readiness. What does it look like? Again, research is telling us there's 5 dimensions. So we're looking holistically. We're not thinking of it. Often when we think about school, we think because it's an education institution, we're thinking more about those academic skills that we need to support them at starting school. You know, and they're helpful, definitely. That's part of it, but it's not the only part, and it's not the most important part. We're looking at physical well-being and motor development, social and emotional development, how they approach learning, are they interested, are they curious, what sorts of things do they like to find out about. Language development is a big one, and cognition and general knowledge. Have a little look at each of those. In the little text box there, we've got children's development is influenced by more than their age and their gender. We tend to say, oh, they're young, and they're a boy. The double whammy, we best keep them back. But really, there's no magic age that ensures success when starting school. Children that are just turning 5 when they start school and have a very happy and successful start. It's no guarantee that you know, if you peel back to they're a bit older, that they're going to have a better start to school. My advice is looking at the individual child and the context of the family, the school, their experiences, and thinking across these 5 domains. Looking at the children going, okay, let's have a think about their strengths in terms of those areas, and what I can do to support them to develop those areas that need a little bit more, in consultation with my early childhood teachers, if that's the case, or with other professionals or family members. So thinking about that. I just want to share quickly with you, this is it's an article, actually a strategic policy framework that was developed by New South Wales Health back in 2019. And it talks about the importance of those first 2,000 days in a child's life. You can Google this and download the article and read it if you're interested in it. But basically it tells us that this time is critical for children's physical, cognitive, social, emotional development, and has shown to have great impact throughout their life. And I picked out that little dot point there because it strongly predicts how children will learn in primary school. So of course everything you've been doing with your little ones so far has been getting them ready to go to school. Interesting, isn't it, that 90% of the child's brain is developed, happens before the age of 5. All the learning that takes place, massive. Before they go to, you think, a formalised learning environment like school. And this document tells us that social and emotional skills are as important as cognitive skills in determining success in school and also work and life. So these skills are developed during the child's earliest years. So that's a big one that we're thinking about, how children develop these skills and how that supports them to be ready to undertake the changes and the learnings that happen as they move into their different environment. I'm really fascinated by brain research. This only goes for a minute, so if you're not, don't worry. But it's just interesting the way it works. I find it interesting the way it works. Let's have a listen.
A child's experiences during the earliest years of life have a lasting impact on the architecture of the developing brain. Genes provide the basic blueprint, but experiences shape the process that determines whether a child's brain will provide a strong or weak foundation for all future learning, behavior, and health. During this important period of brain development, billions of brain cells called neurons send electrical signals to communicate with each other. These connections form circuits that become the basic foundation of brain architecture. Circuits and connections proliferate at a rapid pace and are reinforced through repeated use. Our experiences and environment dictate which circuits and connections get more use. Connections that are used more grow stronger and more permanent. Meanwhile, connections that are used less fade away through a normal process called pruning. Well-used circuits create lightning-fast pathways for neural signals to travel across regions of the brain. Simple circuits form first, providing a foundation for more complex circuits to build on later. Through this process, neurons form strong circuits and connections for emotions, motor skills, behavioral control, logic, language, and memory during the early critical period of development. With repeated use, these circuits become more efficient and connect to other areas of the brain more rapidly. While they originate in specific areas of the brain, the circuits are interconnected. You can't have one type of skill without the others to support it. Like building a house, everything is connected, and what comes first forms a foundation for all that comes later.
So what we want to think about is firing all those parts of the brain and getting them working really well together and thinking across those 5 dimensions. So let's start with social and emotional readiness. In regards to school, that's the capacity to form and sustain positive relationships with teachers, children and other adults, and develop the social and emotional skills for coping with stresses and for cooperating with others. The phrases there in the boxes are some ideas that point towards good social and emotional readiness or social emotional skills. Now, it's not a checklist. It's not like, oh, I need to make sure that my child can do all these things, because these things are still developing and they'll continue to develop as children start school. And in some cases, they continue to develop throughout life. Some adults don't have all these things down. So these are some of the things that we're thinking about. We want children to develop good peer relationships. as we know that friendships are a sign of having a happy start to school. We want them to be able to communicate, so have really good expressive and receptive language. To be attentive. So it's more than just listening, to be able to sit at a task and focus for a period of time. We want them to cope with success and failure. So they need opportunities to do things well, and they need opportunities to do things that don't go right, to be able to get supported and to cope when that happens. They need a good sense of self-control, to be able to regulate their emotions and their behaviour. You want them to tackle and persist at challenging tasks and not give up too quickly. So you can support them to, keep going, have a go and be independent. Be able to listen to instructions and follow those instructions. Share, take turns. You want them to separate easily from you and not be dependent on adults for everyday things in their life or those actions in their life. So these are some of the things that we're thinking about for social and emotional readiness as we start school. Sharon is the most beautiful kindergarten teacher you'll ever come across, I believe. And she's talking a little bit how some of those skills set children up for a positive start to school. And she's reflecting on a child who happens to be young, who has some struggles with some of those skills.
Okay, something that's also very important when your child starts school is to make sure they're socially and emotionally ready for school. A sign that your child might not be socially ready is they might have trouble with their social interactions with others, maybe managing frustrations, taking turns, learning to wait and sharing, all those little things you might notice with your child in social settings. Another thing is emotions. A lot of children have difficulties managing their emotions and frustrations, and they might get emotional over little things that happen, dropping something on the floor or having to wait or not understanding an instruction. That can be another reason that your child may not be ready for school. And not to mention like separating from you. Separation anxiety can often be in children that are not quite emotionally ready for school as well. In my classroom at the moment, I have a child who is quite young, and I notice already he has trouble following instructions. He has trouble with when he does something incorrect in his work, and he'll nearly go to tears. He's calling out to me across the classroom when he's not sure of something, and he'll get there. I know he will, with help and support, but I can already see, and he often says he's tired throughout the school day. So I think for him, school will be okay, he'll get there, but it's a little bit more difficult for him. And he often doesn't follow through with my instructions, with our daily routines and procedures. He gets muddled up or he needs extra prompts, and that could be another reason that he's not quite ready for school.
So Sharon's not saying he shouldn't be at school. She's saying some of these things are making it a little bit more difficult for him, and with the right care and support, and knowing about this little one, then he will get there. So a little bit more about emotional readiness and that idea of self-regulation. Obviously, we've heard that term. And it's about how children manage that incoming and outgoing stress. So I really love this first dot point because it really makes you think, oh, thank goodness that the part of the children's brains responsible for that impulse control and other self-regulation are still developing. So literally children cannot help it. They can't calm themselves down until, they're probably, development is different, but I guess, around that time of starting school, a little bit before, you would hope that it's getting easier for them with your support. And we call that co-regulation, where you help them deal with those angers and those frustrations by being that calm, steady physical presence, by reassuring, explaining. For example, you might take, as I did, 2 little ones to the IGA to bribe them to sit nicely at lunch. We were all going out for lunch to get Kinder Surprises, as you do. Trust me, do not do that with Kinder Surprises, because there was almost 4 and a 2-year-old, and of course the 4-year-old opened his and got crappy little toy as you do, and the 2-year-old opened his and did get a crappy little toy as well, but it happened to be Spider-Man. So the 4-year-old, big total meltdown when he saw this, so we're out for lunch, crying, screaming, wanted that, and of course the 2-year-old's not giving that away. That's he liked it too. So there was a lot happening there, and we had to kind of take him away and try and explain, you'll get your turn a little bit later when Hank's finished with his, after lunch, he'll give you a turn. And, it took quite a while of cajoling, and in the end, the 2-year-old decided, yeah, you can have a turn. So, of course, everything was rosy there for a while. But sometimes we feel like chastising them, and, it's frustrating when they're like that, especially in certain settings. But it's heartening to know that, they're not doing it on purpose. They can't help it. And we have to be that nurturing and caring person that supports them through that and helps them to develop those skills. So what can we do to practice social skills with our little ones? So lots and lots of opportunities for children to, play and interact with other children, with siblings, with you, in context where they are playing those sort of interactive games. So it might be old-fashioned card games or iPad games that ask them to share, take turns, they get used to waiting, used to winning and losing gracefully, but also playing just for the sake of having fun and enjoyment, not that competitive winning or losing. And of course, physical games as well, whether it's hide and seek or chasings or tip, those sorts of things where, when they're young, they don't want to be caught. You can't find them, you're not allowed to find them, you're not allowed to catch them, and then slowly more opportunities to do that. They get an understanding of how the game works and how it can be enjoyable from other people's perspectives. Also, using role-play techniques is a good way to talk to children about how they can have a way into a game with other children. So role-playing those conversations that they might have with other children, role-playing conversations that they might have at school with teachers if they need to ask something or something goes wrong in the playground, as it invariably will for your child at certain times. You want them to be able to stand up for themselves and be assertive in fair and respectful ways. So role-playing that, giving them some ideas, talking it through, are good ways to prepare them for that, because we want them to be able to build up their resilience by able to problem solve simple issues that they're certainly going to come across. When I say simple, it's certainly not simple for them. The same for problem solving. So helping them to analyse and resolve problems in constructive ways is more supportive than going in and solving problems for them, which we're often tempted to do. We want to protect them. We don't want them to feel unhappy for different reasons, but we want to give them the strategies to sort that. Stories, quality literature is a great way to open up those conversations, to help children to understand how others might feel in certain situations. You can make connections to what's happened to the characters in the book, to things that they may have come across or might likely to come across in fun and interesting ways by, sharing a good story. And of course, they're going to look to you as the model. So the way you interact with people, the way you talk about people, the way you demonstrate, all those good quality social skills, that'll be who they're looking towards as their model. Kate, beautiful daughter Layla, started school, and she's a bright little button. I think she turned 5 in the January, which is, really ready for school. One of those girls, and I shouldn't say girls, but one of those kids that just want to sit down and colour in and know how to write things, and you think all those sorts of things, wow, she's going to have a great start. And it's not that she didn't, but Kate soon learned that there was more important skills to be had.
You know, in the lead up, I think parents, there's a lot of focus and a lot of talk around, you know, we're going to the interview with the principal and hope my child does well, and apparently they ask you to count to 30 and write your name. Can your child do that, and can mine do that? Which is all good and well, but I think what I was aware of going into it and solidified once starting is that I think the academic part of learning will come, and that's why you're sending your children to school. And for me, more important is the social skills and the social aspects of school readiness, being ready to fit in a classroom, an individual child, being able to feel comfortable around people, problem solve, work with others, ask questions, and that just requires an inner confidence. It doesn't require the ability to write the alphabet, the name, and that was that's that sort of competitive nature, I think, of school that you get amongst the parent community, which can be overwhelming at times. But social skills are where they survive in the classroom, they survive in the playground, and to me that should be the focus for assessing readiness, as opposed to being able to count to 30, because a teacher can teach that.
Kate developed a really nice relationship with the teacher, and they kind of set up a bit of an email chain about some issues that Lyn was experiencing in the playground, mainly because it was so big, and there was, she was in a big school, and she was quite tentative about being out there, and having that relationship with the teacher, understanding each other's perspectives, they were able to put something in place and really sort that earlier before it became an issue. So that's another really good reason to develop those relationships early on. So about physical well-being and motor development, again, we know when nutritional needs are met, children feel well, they feel energetic, they feel joyful, and they have that energy to learn. Being physically fit and strong really enables children to cope with that school day. It's a long day, especially at the start. They have to sit for long periods of time. They need good core strength. So that's an important area to ensure that's developed well. Good motor skills also give them the confidence to interact in the environment. It gives them that social capital, so when they go in the playground, they can join in a game with confidence, and they know they're able to participate to a good standard. So it really supports their social life as well, and physical strength in your hands, and develops a fine motor skills, also part of that. So one of those 5 domains, but they're all connected, and this is an important one. Some ideas for that, as I said, gross motor skills, fundamental movement skills. We think our children are out in the backyard and they're having fun and they're playing, and they are. But we really want to be intentional about thinking about teaching them or giving them opportunities to explore ball skills, catching, throwing, kicking, running games, jumping, hopping, opportunities to climb. So they're really developing their core strength, plus those basic fundamental skills that will enable them to participate in a whole lot of new games once they go to school. That idea of risky play also is an interesting one to build children's resilience and self-efficacy. When you encourage them to do something that's just a little bit more outside their comfort zone. They might go to the park and you can support them to try something new that they haven't been on before. Or, they finally get on that scooter and they go a bit further, or they climb that tree. You're there, you don't want them too risky, but you want to allow them that freedom to, wow, feel good about yourself when you've done something that you didn't think you could do, or you can do it well. And of course, fine motor too. Lots of fun activities around cutting, pasting, Play-Doh, getting magazines or old birthday cards at home, and trying to devise some nice fun activities around that. What opportunities do children get to be physically active at school? And I'd ask that of my school community, particularly in those early days of kindergarten. Like, of course, there's recess and lunch, but when children have come from early childhood centres, they come from home, they're used to that indoor, outdoor, you know, I can go out and play whenever I want to, or I can, they're not used to sitting for long periods of time. So I would want to see opportunities for, you know, in and out of the classroom a little bit, particularly in those early days. Okay, we've been in the classroom for half an hour, we've read a story, we've done some, whatever it is that we need to do. Let's go out and have a game for 10 minutes and do a bit of a run around, or go to the toilet on the way back, or come in, and you want to see some kind of balance and easing into that more formalised structure of sitting in a classroom. I think so anyway. Ben, now we're talking about approaches to learning, and Ben talked about his young son Will, who was going to school. He was also very excited for the change because he really loves routine and he loves learning. He's very inquisitive, asks lots of questions, and he really liked the technical explanation. He also liked that it was something he could do for himself, that his little brother couldn't tag along. So he was really curious, he loved questioning, he loved exploring. So thinking about what your children's dispositions for learning are. What are they interested in? What sorts of things get them going? A couple of things there that I like is that routine. Children love routine. It makes them feel safe and comfortable. So getting them used to that nice routine at home prior to going to school is kind of sets them up for, okay, we know we'll do this at a certain time, and that can be really helpful. And also that technical explanation. Sometimes we give a quick answer, or we might dumb down that vocabulary, but it's important not to do that, to fully explain things. And even if they don't totally understand it then, they'll be excited about using those big words, and it's building block of their language. I'm trying to better hurry myself along. Academic skills, and when I talk about academic skills, there's so many, isn't there? And I like to focus on language and literacy because that's sort of something that I'm into a little bit. But language is really the key for many, many academic skills. I don't know, I was going to say Vygotsky, you may have heard of Vygotsky. Language is a tool for thought. So if you have good language, you're a good thinker, you're a good problem solver. So lots of talking, listening, lots of conversations during play and during everyday experiences. Of course, reading for enjoyment. You get words in books and phrases and structure, language structures in books here in everyday conversations. So that's a great place for building vocabulary, setting them up for when they will do those more formalised reading down the track, that they're used to book language, they're used to how books work. Of course, lots of rhymes, listening to the sounds in words, getting them to enjoy the rhymes in books. And of course, children invariably do. They love books and they love books that rhyme. And so lots of opportunities to do that. One of the earliest literacy skills that, more formal skills that children do is recognising their name, starting to write their name, and they often use the letters in their name as kind of a way into that letter sound correspondence. Oh, my name's Alfie, I can write the A. Oh, and then, you know, you can see A, oh, look at that word up there, starts with A too. So starting to talk about those things. You don't need to teach our children all the letters of the alphabet and the letter sound correspondence before they go to school. They'll learn that at school. Some kids are really interested in that, and that's great if they are, and you can develop that. But don't force it. You know, do what they like to do. Of course, drawing, creating, and experimenting with writing. Again, some kids really love doing that. Try and give them opportunities to do that. And communicating the messages, talking about the messages that are being conveyed whilst you're doing that. Next couple of slides talk about play, and A little bit of research there that we know play shapes the architecture of the brain in unique ways. So it links all those domains. Social, creative, cognitive skills, often physical skills, all coming together and firing up during play, during make-believe play, creative play, exploratory play, child-directed play, or play alongside you. I won't read all this for you, but just little snippets of how play is associated with the development of emotional competence and empathy. So children become aware of each other's emotions, what motivates them, what they really like to do. By collaborating and cooperating, they learn how to negotiate, problem solve. They experience those little personal dilemmas, and then we work together at giving them opportunities to sort them. Just that fun, that increased feeling of well-being, listening to them laugh and have those joyful experiences, and physical health. So physical play is going to be very supportive of those fundamental movement skills and their metabolism. For social skills, goes without saying, interacting with others, helps them to regulate their behaviour, understand the feelings of others, making them feel really independent. You would have heard, your children say, no, I don't want to do it, don't help me, really encouraging that. But being there to support them when they start to fall apart, and they know that you're there to, add that lending hand. Also, intellectual and creative skills. We want our children to be problem solvers and divergent thinkers and be creative. They're not going to get that through sitting down, tracing the letters of the alphabet and the numbers on a stencil, are they? There might be a place for that. I'm not saying that there isn't, but play will fire up all those parts of the brain. So when you're thinking about age appropriate, supporting them to be ready for school, these are the best things that you can do. My question for school is, what opportunities do children get to play in and outside the classroom? So we know they play at lunch and recess, but how do you support them to do play within that learning environment? What opportunities are there to problem solve, to do inquiries, to follow their interests, and to, I guess, socialise with children in a more confined environment, especially in the early days of school, because, you go out in that playground, you can't find anybody that you know often, but they're learning to know who's who, their friendships, getting to know people in more of a confined space when there's lots of opportunities for them to talk and socialise and play within the classroom in those early weeks and months of school. Lisa is another colleague of mine, and she has some older children and some younger children. She's got a little bit to say about play.
So I've got two older boys who are now 19 and 20, and when they were little boys before school, I was studying to be a teacher, and I thought that if I had these two children that started kindergarten, knowing how to read, knowing how to write, knowing how to count numbers and add and subtract, that I would be considered a super mum. And so I made sure that they could do these things before they started kindergarten. I realised that by the end of kindergarten, all of the other kids had just caught up with them and overtaken in some cases as well. So when it came to my two younger children, who are now year 3 and kindergarten, I took the complete opposite approach, and I let them focus on play and creativity and just growing who they were as a person. And they've both started kindergarten without knowing to read and write. They know some basic counting, some basic sounds. I've not focused on teaching them any academic skills whatsoever, and they've settled into school really, really confidently and really well.
And I'm certainly not against academic skills by any means, but what I'm thinking about is putting them in perspective and thinking about age-appropriate activities for young children, and those academic skills will come. Children, as I said, like mostly having friends, and they like knowing the rules of school, helps them to feel good about school, and being big. Teachers tend to focus on social and emotional development as important for readiness. Parents often worry about academic preparedness and also the friends component. This is coming from research. You may or may not agree with this. And early childhood educators, they really want to share what they know about the children because they know them so well. They want to talk to the school teachers and when they can share that information. Penny is going to tell you what she likes about school. I asked Penny after her first year in kindergarten, she just started year 1, tell me about school, tell me about what you like, and tell me your advice to someone that's just starting kindergarten.
My favourite things at school is sport and drawing, and I like to read and write and all stuff. The thing about school that I don't like is the rules. It's because you can't go someplace, some places are out of bounds, some things are illegal, no toys in the classroom, there's lots of rules that you cannot even like. And like, no going outside the whole school. The advice that I would give is no breaking rules. Listen to what the teacher says. And there's one thing that no one actually has, the rule that that lots of people break, but detention. She leaves always. And lip seal, put your hands up. So there's my advice. Do that, please.
If there's any teachers here, you'll relate to that and you'll think, wow, do I really sound like that? Have I really fixated these little ones on following the rules? What am I doing? But of course, schools have to have rules. We all have ways to behave in our different settings. We may not call them rules. And when they get to school, there's lots of rules, so they be fixated on that. So some general considerations. Don't assume because children are younger, they'll have difficulty. Look at children as individuals. Each child's strengths, first of all. What are the wonderful things that they can do that have learned in those first 2,000 days. And their needs. How can you look across those 5 dimensions and support? Where should we aim a little bit extra support for our children in helping them to be ready? We're told generally, if your child is keen to go, so they're of age to go, they're keen to go, they know other children who are going and it suits the family, then they should go. That's very broad. And that last statement, holding back, might actually be holding back. You're thinking about your own children, your own little ones, and there's lots of reasons why. It might be associated with age, it might be associated with social and emotional skills, different things come up and you think it might be beneficial to keep them back. And in consultation with others, you make those decisions. But also think about you are holding them back for what reason? Are you actually holding them back from moving forward, from learning to regulate their behaviour a little bit better, to learn these academic skills, because they will continue to learn these skills as they move into school. Also think about if they're having another year at home, are they going to, do you know that they will sufficiently continue to develop? Is that development going to be happening in the early childhood centre? Have you got supports in place to help them at home? So there's just things to consider. So making judgments about, nearly finished, two more slides to go. Making judgments about readiness involves more than just considering the child in isolation. So here's just some questions I throw out to think about with your child in your context. So is your child within the legal starting age? Actually, that reminds me of a very short story. I was at a kind of it was a school reunion of sorts a few weeks ago, and we were talking about school as you do. And Liz told us a story that her mother will not confirm, but she was 5 in August, and I'm going back quite a while. But she was 5 in August, and her mother sent her to school, and her mother said, if anyone asks, you're 5. Of course, that's not going to happen now with all the going back to a long time ago in a small school up in the country, and of course that's not going to happen now. But Liz certainly, she did. And the reason was she was one of 7. Her mum had 3 little ones under her. So for everybody's sanity, peace of mind, Liz went to school. Does your child want to go to school? Are they talking about school? Is it on their radar because of their early childhood setting? What do the early childhood teachers say when you ask them? What do you think? You know, is my child ready for school? What's your advice? And then temper that with what knowledge of your child and your family they're basing that information on. Listen to what they're saying and thinking, okay, I have to think now about what's best for my family, what I'm thinking as well. Likewise, what do the school teachers say? Maybe you've gone to the school interview with the principal of some school and they've given you certain advice, or maybe you've just had conversations with personnel from the school and they've said, you know, yes or no or whatever. So what knowledge of your child and your family are they basing that advice on? Does your child have friends or acquaintances going to school? Has a reasonable two-way relationship between the family and the school being built, or is there potential for that? So if it's important for your child to go to school, then is there opportunity for you to have those conversations with the teacher and talking about the extra support they might need in certain ways, and what provisions do you feel will be made in the school setting? Will starting school make a positive difference to the family as well as the child, like I'm sure it did in Liz's case? Do you have a sense that your child will feel comfortable in the school community? Thinking about the actual school context, the size, what's the school like? When you walk into the school office, do you get like a nice warm feeling because you're greeted so, oh, I feel comfortable here? Or, is it sometimes it can be different? Is there support at the school for families of culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds or children with additional needs? So if you have some of those needs, then thinking about how your child is supported, what's available for them in that particular setting. And then how comfortable do you feel about the educational ethos of the school? And hopefully there's lots of opportunities prior to the year starting that you will get to go to the school, have some information nights or playgroup sessions or transitional days. And if not, make your own appointment, make your own time to go and find out about the school that you're looking to send your little one. Is it the one for you? Is it the one for your child? Sharon's very quickly going to talk about a couple of children and telling that, anyway, you have a listen.
Okay, last year I had 2 boys in my classroom that I was very concerned about, especially with their literacy development and their ability to listen on the floor and acquire sound knowledge with spelling words. But as the year went on, it's like they just needed this settling period. They needed to take in what school life was about, and they ended up being my stronger writers and readers by the end of the year. It was like they just needed time to go at their own pace and absorb what school life was about. And they weren't misbehaving. It was like they just needed to take in what I was the instruction and be ready for it. And when they were ready, they just flew. And it was like they needed a little bit of growing up time. And I believe that all the early learning we did in literacy, as well as oral work and written work, it all came together for those boys. And that was really lovely to see.
So it does take time, and everyone's developmentally different. Got a beautiful teacher like Sharon and being supportive. Children will get there, and they just won't all get there at the same amount of time. So try and relax a little bit sometimes and not stress too much at the start. I remember when I was teaching kindergarten, I had a mum come up to me after a couple of weeks, and silly here. Oh, these are going to be the best readers. You get your home readers week 2. I'm going back to early 2000s. You didn't know any better, in my defence. And she told me that her
child just wasn't getting this reading thing, and it had been literally a couple of weeks. And part of that was my fault, but it was fine. I'm going to leave you with some words from Morris Malaguzzi, who's the great Italian educator from Reggio Emilia. You may have heard of him, and he's written, he wrote a beautiful poem called 100. And this is just a little snippet out of it. And he said, children have 100 worlds to discover, 100 worlds to invent, 100 worlds to dream. Sometimes we stifle capacity for surprise and wonder. So busy are we looking for the signs of readiness, for what is predicted, for what is required, that we miss the new, the unexpected, the evidence of children's great and unknowable potential. All your children have great and unknowable potential that you can think about. So thanks for listening, everyone.